Hi. Today I'll be speaking about purpose. Now I'm going to speak about it in relation to a broader um, journey that I believe that's going to be key and essential for those who want to live a more meaningful life and a more joyful life in the process. So today let's get into this topic of purpose. Okay. In Colossians 1, verse 16, it says, "For everything, absolutely everything, above and below, visible and invisible, rank after rank of angels, everything got started in Him and find its purpose in Him." Now, this is really interesting, okay, because we see here in Colossians where the Bible allude to having a purpose, but more importantly, that the purpose is found in the Lord. Okay, and we all have a purpose. It sets up a premise also for a Christian life where we have a purpose because we were created by God. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, because we were created by God, so because of that, we have a purpose. Okay, but what is this purpose? Okay, and why is it important? Because first of all, purpose gives life a meaning. Okay, um, secondly, purpose gives us a profound sense of who we are and why we are here. Here are some benefits to having a purpose. Okay. Firstly, you have a more joyful life. Okay. You have more happiness in your life. Secondly, you live longer. Okay. So at this point, um, I want to talk a little bit about what do I mean by live longer. Okay. And so there's some interesting studies that have been done. Okay, so one of it was, as I've been on a journey studying God's vision and purpose for a city, and one of those elements that came out as important on what would uh, be a progressive city, or what would a city look like if it was built after the heart of God. Okay, and one of the things that we find um, in that city that Isaiah saw in a vision was that people live really long lives, at least by today's standard. And one of those area of long life that kind of stood out to me was the fact that the Bible was quite directive and explicit in terms of what long life means. And it suggested that the average lifespan was above 100 years old. Okay, so I begin to look more into that, dig deeper into that, and I begin to ask a lot, you know, can we actually, on average, I mean, I'm not talking about one or two individuals, but on average, live above 100 years old? Okay, if it says in the Bible, it has to be true. If it's true, that means it is attainable and achievable by people here on this earth. Okay, so and apparently I wasn't the only one asking that question, There's an organization called the National Geographic, and apparently they asked the same question too. Can people live above 100 years old? Okay, and they engage one of the researchers, reporters, to find out is it really true people can live above 100 years old on average, okay? And he found six communities around the world where they have a large population of what we call centenarians. Centenarians are basically people who live above 100 years old. Okay, so we're not talking about one or two isolated individuals. We're talking about, like a whole bunch of people in the community all living above 100 years old. Okay, and he found a number of these communities around the world. One in Costa Rica, another one is in Okinawa, Japan. Another one is in Loma Linda, California. And so you can see that, first of all, they were across uh, culture or genetics. In other words, that it wasn't, they all did not come from the same line, genetic line, if you will. Okay. So genes play a role, but there are a lot of people with very different genes who live to be above 100 years old. Okay. It's not culture either, because you look at it, you got Japanese, you got Costa Ricans, you got Americans. So you got people from very diverse culture all living above 100. Okay. And you cannot really say it's the pollution because or the environment to a certain extent because some of them live in the jungles and some of them live in the city. Okay, so it makes you begin to wonder what are some of, if you will, similarities across all these different communities where you have large population of centenarians. Okay, and I'm not going to go into detail of all the similarities, but I want to bring one out. Okay, and one of the similarities that he found was that people in these communities have a purpose for living. Okay, all these centenarians have a purpose for living. Okay, and that is one of the reasons he believes that they live longer is because they have a purpose. Okay, their life have a purpose. Okay, and I'll show you a few more interesting studies in attempt to support this hypothesis. Okay. Thirdly, the benefits of having a clarity in purpose of having a purpose is that it concentrates your effort, allowing you to be more successful. It increases your chances of being more successful in life. Okay, and I'll further elaborate on that as well. Okay, so let's talk about some of the studies that show they can live longer. I'm going to bring some very interesting studies to bear as well. Okay, so first one, let's have the most controversial one. Okay, if you look at the bottom of the screen here, it says daughters increase longevity of fathers, but daughters and sons equally reduce the longevity of mothers. Okay, so this is a really controversial study. Okay, so what they found was that for men, the more daughters you have, the longer you live. Okay, but for mothers, doesn't matter whether you have sons or daughters, the more you have, the shorter your life is. Okay, so so clearly, if you look at it, it's not genetics, it's not diet. I mean, they're all living in the same household. Okay, so they all have the same diet, same culture, same values, same beliefs, most probably same environment. Okay, so what's the only thing that could potentially increase the longevity of fathers, but the sons doesn't increase the longevity of fathers? So having more sons don't increase it, but having more daughters increase it. So why? Okay, when they're all clearly living in the same household, sharing the same food, have the same lifestyle, and more or less have pretty much share a lot of similar genes as well. Okay, so there one of the hypotheses for and again it's a very controversial study. So but one of the reasons why they say that fathers live longer the more daughters they have is because of purpose. Okay, and I'll tell you how it fits into purpose. Because they say fathers have a tendency to feel like that their purpose is to help support their daughters. Some of them financially, some of them more than financially. Okay, but at the very least, financially, fathers, for whatever reason, always feel like their purpose is to financially support their daughters. So, with more daughters they feel, if you will, a greater burden on their purpose. And so they live longer trying to achieve their purpose to financially support their daughters. Okay. However, with sons, fathers feel that sons can financially take care of themselves. Okay, so they don't really need, if you will, to provide for them. So it's an interesting theory. Okay, I'm not saying that is my one and only evidence to suggest that purpose gives you a longer life. This is just a controversial study that I thought just makes it interesting and funny. uh and maybe it has some truth to it. Okay, but definitely, the similarities across multiple societies where they have the largest population of centenarian and all of them having a purpose, you know, definitely contributes to the idea that purpose do increase your lifespan. And when you think about it too, just from an anecdotal perspective, uh, how many people die shortly after retirement? If you think about it, why? They have less stress. For most of them, they have, besides just a chronological age difference from year to year, most of them do not all of a sudden have a different diet, do not all of a sudden have a totally different lifestyle that increases their their chance of dying. And one of the possible reasons I strongly believe is that purpose. I think a lot of people who go into retirement don't have a strong purpose for living. Okay. And because of that, they succumb to an earlier death. And this kind of backs up a interesting observation. And if you look at in January 15, 2000, okay, this is 15 days after moving into the new millennium. Okay, demographers across the world observe a rise in death rate just after the new year. Okay, so why? What was so special about the year 2000? Okay, Y2K did not happen. Okay, we did not face a massive catastrophe and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people died. Okay, in fact, we think back to year 2000. Okay, nothing happened. Okay, so why all of a sudden a sharp rise in death rate just after we hit 2000? You know, I think the only plausible explanation is that people just had the will to live to 2000. There's so many people that were about to die who just, had such a strong will that, they just want to live to 2000. And the moment it hits the year 2000, that purpose was gone. That purpose that was tied into staying alive to 2000 was gone because they did achieve it. They did reach 2000 and their body just automatically shut down. Okay, so um, so that goes to the point that having a purpose does increase your lifespan. Okay, if you look back at this point, the third point is concentrate your effort by allowing you to become more successful. Uh, and you look at Philippians 3, verse 13. Again, and this Paul saying, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind me, straining towards what is ahead. I want you to focus on this word, but one thing I do. Paul, in his wisdom, okay, and later in his life too, you know, somehow figure out that he has some form of personal purpose, okay, and by putting his focus on that purpose, okay, he will achieve more. Okay, and if you think about it from a logical perspective too, it kind of makes sense. Okay, if you are doing everything that everyone's doing, how effective are you going to be? But if you concentrate all your time and effort and energy to focus and to do really well in what you're called to do or your purpose, you have a stand of much chances of being successful. Okay, Isaiah 26 verse 3. You, Lord, give perfect peace to those who keep their purpose firm and put their trust in you. Okay. So we see time and time again in the Bible, the Lord talking about purpose, about being able you know, to fulfill your purpose. Okay. Which brings us to a really interesting question. Okay, as Christians, okay, uh, do we have a single purpose for all Christians, or do each person have a different purpose? Okay, in other words, do just because you're a Christian, do all of a sudden all of us have one purpose? Or is it a situation where, each person could have a different purpose? And I've seen Christian writings and thoughts that have gone both ways. Okay, some people feel that, uh, suggesting that each person have a purpose could be a little bit egocentric, and and it just makes everyone so internally focused about their success, their purpose, their calling, and certain truth to that. Okay, and then there's also the question of, maybe we're all Christians and so we all have one purpose now. Okay, so this is how I like to think about it. Okay, and you guys are free to think about it however you want. But the way I see it is that there is an overarching Christian purpose. Yes, the moment you're a Christian, you're a child of God. You're born into the kingdom. You're born into the family of God. Okay, and because of that, you have you are part of the family business. If you can think about it that way, you're part of God's family business. Okay, and you're part of God's family. And because of that, there is, if you will, a certain responsibility, expectation, and purpose. But yet, within that purpose, you could have a personal calling, okay, where you are called to do something in your life that is unique and special, and there should be room for that. And I think for some people, that calling is have a little bit more clarity than for some other people. I think everyone has a calling. For some people, it's just clearer, and for others, they may not see it yet, or it may not be as clear. But I believe that everyone has a personal calling, and everyone is part of a larger Christian purpose. Okay, hope I hope that kind of clears it up for some of you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Christian purpose. I believe as Christians, we're all trustees of God's kingdom. Okay, in Genesis 1:28 it says, God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And so we see right here in the garden, when God first made Adam and Eve, okay, he said to them, okay, uh, and it's not just for the guys, not just for the girls, it's he called them as a unit, okay, and he said, to have dominion, okay. So what does it suggest? Okay, it suggests that the Lord entrusted the earth or His creation to them. Okay, it doesn't suggest that they have ownership. Okay, but it does suggest that they have a responsibility. Okay, if you will, they are trustees of what the Lord has created. Okay, and if you look at it with that lens and with that perspective, then 1 Corinthians 4 verse 2 takes on a different perspective. Okay, now in this way, those who are trusted with something valuable must show they are worthy of that trust. Okay, so if you have this perspective, it's easier for you to understand your Christian purpose. Okay, you are entrusted, okay, with the affairs that happen on this earth as the child of God, okay, as trustees of God's creation, okay, and that is your purpose, to be the trustees of God's creation, okay. I think that's the best way to understand having dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth, okay. Um, and that fits in to the overall servant leadership and servant mindset that the Christian believes. It doesn't. There's no contradiction there. Okay, if you see yourself as trustees of God's creation. Okay, so that would kind of have a Christian purpose. How does salvation fit in there? Well, because sin has come into this earth. As part of restoring the earth, you know, uh, God gave his life, so that we could be saved. And so it's as trustees of the salvation as well, it is entrusted to us to see that others get saved as well. That's part of our mission of restoring the earth. Okay. But it doesn't remove our obligation or our responsibility uh, over the earth as well. Okay. Just because that we have an added responsibility to get people safe, it doesn't remove our earlier responsibility to of the earth. Okay, I hope that helps to bring some understanding there as well. Okay, so if you remember my earlier diagram, okay, let me move up here. So you have that Christian purpose where we are trustees of this earth. Okay, Then you within that you have your personal calling. Okay, so how does the personal calling work? Okay, and this is what I think our personal calling should look like. It should be the intersection of your strength, your passion, and your values. Okay, and if you know what that thing is, that is the intersection of your strength, the passion, and your values. Uh, you know, you you will find yourself in a really good place if that personal calling aligns with your vocation. That means what you do to earn a living. Okay. If you have an alignment of your personal calling and your vocation, okay, you would be in an extremely good place. Okay. So what is strength? Okay. Strength is what you have to offer as a person. Okay. Passion is what really excites you. Value is what you find most important. Okay. So now what you have to offer, the way uh, the way you can think about it is the gift. What natural talents or gift that the Lord has given you multiplied by the amount of investment you have put into the gift. Okay, so in other words, if the Lord has given you a natural talent to play the piano really well, okay, but you have made zero investment in it, you put zero effort to learn how to play the piano, you put zero effort uh, to practice it, would you have any strength in playing the piano? No. Okay. So you got to understand this is a multiplicative relationship. Okay. If your investment is zero, okay, your total strength will be zero. Okay. So that's how I perceive strength. However, if you got natural talent in something and you invested in it, every hour of investment you put in it will just absolutely multiply your strength in that area. Okay. And that gives you the strength to play the piano, to sing, to do math, to do engineering, or to be a doctor. There are many different areas, or maybe you're the creative type, or maybe you're the analytical type. So people have different strength, okay? But it's all a multiplication of their gift, whatever talent the Lord has given them initially, multiplied by the investment they've put into it. Okay. And you can also see, even if you had minimal, okay, we're talking about minimal, like gift in an area, but if you are hardworking enough and you put an absolutely humongous amount of investment into it in terms of your time, effort, energy, and resources, it could become your strength too. Okay, so that's how you can think about strength. Okay, but having strength alone doesn't necessarily equate to your calling, and I think this is where some people get really confused. Just because you have a lot of strength in an area, you're really good at something, doesn't make that your calling. Okay, because it needs to align with your passion and your values. Okay, passion is what excites you, um, and you'll realize that I meet some people, they're really strong in one area just to grow and realize that that's not what they're passionate about, and then having to restart building strength in another area so that it will align with their passion. Okay, and what's really interesting is that you find this quite frequently in the medical field. Doctors, did it because they were not truly passionate about it, but they had some gifting, and their parents sure made sure they studied hard and got them into medical school. But then when they graduated, they realized, you know what, that's not where their passion really is. And so they some of them stay and remain to be really unhappy doctors, while others, very few others would jump ship at that point and do something totally different. Okay. Then the third one is values. Okay. What you find most important. Okay, does it align with your personal values? Okay, if you can find an alignment of all these three, then yes, you have found your personal calling. Okay, and if that personal calling then aligns with your vocation or what you do to make a living, then you're in a really great place. Okay? If not, don't worry, don't fret. There are other ways to express your personal calling as well that will still give you a lot of joy and happiness in your life. Okay, so what are some possibilities? Okay, I mentioned earlier, the best situation you can be in is when you're using your calling in your vocation. Okay, the next level down, you're still using your calling, but not in your vocation. Okay, and there are a lot of great places to express it. Maybe you can use it in church, maybe you can use it in a non-profit organization. Maybe you can volunteer your time and your effort. You can use it with, there are many ways to express your calling outside your vocation. Okay, maybe you just need to continue to do the work that you do for your income, but then you know, you could wisely spend your time doing other things that's going to benefit others with your calling. Okay. The third one, you have an average life. Okay, what does that mean? You're using your strength, but not your calling. You know, you put a lot of time and effort to develop a strength, but you know what? It doesn't quite align with your passion or your values, but it's a strength, and you're using it. So it's it's not a you're still living a life. It's pretty average, but it could be a lot better. So for someone like you, you need to figure out what your calling is. Okay, and then find a way to express it. And you can easily move up to either good or best. Now, for some of you, you could be having a really sad life. And this is what I mean by really sad life, okay? You're not using your calling or your strength. You're just going to work because it pay the bills, okay? And you know who you are, okay? Do not raise your hand, okay? And do not look around to see who's reacting to this. But you this is what I mean by a sad life, okay? For someone like you need to seek the Lord, and figure out what your calling is. It's also an opportunity for you. Okay, if you're aware that you're living a pretty sad life, you know, it's an opportunity for you to think about what your calling is. What's your strength? How does it align with your passion and your values? How can you best express it? If you can express it in a vocation, great. If not, express it in church, express it in a non-profit organization, express it in a way that would benefit someone else. There's a lot of things you can do. Okay, and if you do any of these or some of these, you will live, a more joyful life, or at the very least, okay, at the very least, you'll live a longer life. Okay, so here's some takeaways. Okay, how often do you think of things you do in relation to your Christian purpose? As trustees of the kingdom of God. Okay, all the activities you do every day, okay, how much of them aligns with that purpose as being a trustee of the kingdom of God? Okay. Secondly, do you know your calling? Is there something that you do that's an intersection of your strength, your passion, and your value? Okay. And where are you on that scale? Are you living the best life you could possibly live? If not, how can you express your calling? Okay, so that you live a better life tomorrow than you do today, and definitely better than yesterday. Let us pray.